The Analects of Confucius. Book 1. 1. The master said, "Is it not pleasant to learn with a constant perseverance and application? Is it not delightful to have friends coming from distant quarters? Is he not a man of complete virtue who feels no discomposure, though men may take no note of him?" 2. The philosopher Yu said, "They are few who, being filial and fraternal, are fond of offending their superiors. There have been none who, not liking to offend their superiors, have been fond of stirring up confusion. The superior man bends his attention to what is radical. That being established, all practical courses naturally grow up. Filial piety and fraternal submission, are they not the root of all benevolent actions?" 3. The master said, "Fine words and an insinuating appearance are seldom associated with true virtue." 4. The philosopher Zeng said, "I daily examine myself on 3 points. Whether in transacting business for others I may have been not faithful, whether in intercourse with friends I may have been not sincere, whether I may have not mastered and practiced the instructions of my teacher." 5. The master said, "To rule a country of 1,000 chariots, there must be reverent attention to business and sincerity, economy in expenditure and love for men, and the employment of the people at the proper seasons." 6. The master said, "A youth, when at home, should be filial, and abroad respectful to his elders. He should be earnest and truthful. He should overflow in love to all and cultivate the friendship of the good. When he has time and opportunity, after the performance of these things, he should employ them in polite studies." 7. Zixia said, "If a man withdraws his mind from the love of beauty and applies it as sincerely to the love of the virtuous, if in serving his parents he can exert his utmost strength, if in serving his prince he can devote his life, if in his intercourse with his friends his words are sincere, although men say that he has not learned, I will certainly say that he has." 8. The master said, "If the scholar lacks gravity, he will not earn any veneration, and his learning will not be solid. Hold faithfulness and sincerity as first principles. Have no friends not equal to yourself. When you have faults, do not fear to abandon them." 9. The philosopher Zeng said, "Let there be a careful attention to perform the funeral rites to parents, and let them be followed when long gone with the ceremonies of sacrifice. Then the virtue of the people will resume its proper excellence." 10. Ziqin asked Zigong, saying, "When our master comes to any country, he does not fail to learn all about its government. Does he ask for this information, or is it given to him?" Zigong said, "Our master is benign, upright, courteous, temperate, and complacent, and thus he gets his information. The master's way of asking information, is it not different from that of other men?" 11. The master said, "While a man's father is alive, look at the bent of his will. When his father is dead, look at his conduct. If for 3 years he does not alter from the way of his father, he may be called filial." 12. The philosopher Yu said, "In practicing the rules of propriety, a natural ease is to be prized. In the ways prescribed by the ancient kings, this is the excellent quality, and in things small and great we follow them. Yet it is not to be observed in all cases. If one, knowing how such ease should be prized, manifests it, without regulating it by the rules of propriety, this likewise is not to be done. 13. The philosopher Yu said, "When agreements are made according to what is right, what is spoken can be made good. When respect is shown according to what is proper, one keeps far from shame and disgrace. When the parties upon whom a man leans are proper persons to be intimate with, he can make them his guides and masters." 14. The master said, "He who aims to be a man of complete virtue in his food does not seek to gratify his appetite, nor in his dwelling place does he seek the appliances of ease. He is earnest in what he is doing and careful in his speech. He frequents the company of men of principle that he may be rectified. Such a person may be said indeed to love to learn." 15. Gong said, "What do you pronounce concerning the poor man who does not flatter, and the rich man who is not proud?" The master replied, "They will do, but they are not equal to him who, though poor, is yet cheerful, and to him who, though rich, loves the rules of propriety." Gong replied, "It is said in the book of poetry, 'As you cut and then file, as you carve and then polish.' The meaning is the same, I apprehend, as that which you have just expressed." 16. The master said, "With one like Tzu, I can begin to talk about the odes." I told him one point, and he knew its proper relevance. The master said, "I will not be troubled at men's not knowing me. I will be troubled that I do not know men." Book 2. 1. The master said, "He who exercises government by means of his virtue may be compared to the North Polar Star, which keeps its place and all the stars turn towards it." 2. The master said, "In the book of poetry are 300 pieces, but the design of them all may be embraced in one sentence: have no depraved thoughts." 3. The master said, "If the people be led by laws and uniformity sought to be given them by punishments, they will try to avoid the punishment, but have no sense of shame. If they be led by virtue and uniformity sought to be given them by the rules of propriety, they will have the sense of shame, and moreover, will become good." 4. The master said, "At 15 I had my mind bent on learning. At 30 I stood firm. At 40 I had no doubts. At 50 I knew the decrees of heaven. At 60 my ear was an obedient organ for the reception of truth. At 70 I could follow what my heart desired without transgressing what was right." 5. Meng Yi asked what filial piety was. The master said, "It is not being disobedient." Soon after, as Fan Che was driving him, the master told him, saying, "Meng Sun asked me what filial piety was, and I answered him, 'Not being disobedient.'" Fan Che said, "What did you mean?" The master replied, "That parents, when alive, be served according to propriety, that when dead they should be buried according to propriety, and that they should be sacrificed to according to propriety." 6. Meng Wu asked what filial piety was. The master said, "Parents are anxious lest their children should be sick." 7. Yu asked what filial piety was. The master said, "The filial piety of nowadays means the support of one's parents." But dogs and horses likewise are able to do something in the way of support, without reverence. What is there to distinguish the one support given from the other? 8. Zhe Xia asked what filial piety was. The master said, "The difficulty is with the countenance. If, when their elders have any troublesome affairs, the young take the toil of them, and if, when the young have wine and food, they set them before their elders, is this to be considered filial piety?" 9. The master said, "I have talked with Hui for a whole day, and he has not made any objection to anything I said, as if he were stupid. He has retired, and I have examined his conduct when away from me, and found him to be able to illustrate my teachings. Hui, he is not stupid." 10. The master said, "See what a man does. Mark his motives. Examine in what things he rests. How can a man conceal his character? How can a man conceal his character?" 11. The master said, "If a man keeps cherishing his old knowledge so as continually to be acquiring new, he may be a teacher of others." 12. The master said, "The accomplished scholar is not a utensil." 13. Zhe Gong asked what constituted the superior man. The master said, "He acts before he speaks, and afterwards speaks according to his actions." 14. The master said, "The superior man is all-embracing and no partisan. The mean man is partisan and not all-embracing." 15. The master said, "Learning without thought is labour lost. Thought without learning is perilous." 16. The master said, "The study of strange doctrines is injurious indeed." 17. The master said, "You, shall I teach you what knowledge is? When you know a thing, to hold that you know it, and when you do not know a thing, to allow that you do not know it. This is knowledge." 18. Zhe Zhang was learning with a view to official emolument. The master said, "Hear much, and put aside the points of which you stand in doubt, while you speak cautiously at the same time of the others. Then you will afford few occasions for blame. See much, and put aside the things which seem perilous, while you are cautious at the same time in carrying the others into practice. Then you will have few occasions for repentance." When one gives few occasions for blame in his words and few occasions for repentance in his conduct, he is in the way to get emolument. 19. The Duke Ai asked, saying, "What should be done in order to secure the submission of the people?" Confucius replied, "Advance the upright and set aside the crooked. Then the people will submit. Advance the crooked and set aside the upright. Then the people will not submit." 20. Ji Kang asked how to cause the people to revere their ruler, to be faithful to him, and to go on to drive themselves to virtue. The master said, "Let him preside over them with gravity. Then they will revere him. Let him be filial and kind to all. Then they will be faithful to him. Let him advance the good and teach the incompetent. Then they will eagerly seek to be virtuous." 21. Someone addressed Confucius, saying, "Sir, why are you not engaged in the government?" The master said, What does the book of history say of filial piety? You are filial, you discharge your brotherly duties. These qualities are displayed in government. This then also constitutes the exercise of government. Why must there be any question of one actually being in the government? 22. The master said, I do not know how a man without truthfulness is to get on. How can a large carriage be made to go without the crossbar for yoking the oxen to, or a small carriage without the arrangement for yoking the horses? 23. Sir Zhang asked whether the affairs of 10 ages after could be known. Confucius said, the Yin dynasty followed the regulations of the Xia. Wherein it took from or added to them may be known. The Zhou dynasty has followed the regulations of the Yin, wherein it took from or added to them may be known. Some others may follow the Zhou, but though it should be at the distance of 100 ages, its affairs may be known. 24. The master said, for a man to sacrifice to a spirit which does not belong to him is flattery. To see what is right and not to do it is want of courage. Book 3. 1. Confucius said of the head of the Ji family, who had 8 rows of pantomimes in his area, if he can bear to do this, what may he not bear to do? 2. The 3 families used the Yong ode while the vessels were being removed at the conclusion of the sacrifice. The master said, assisting are the princes. The Son of Heaven looks profound and grave. What application can these words have in the hall of the 3 families? 3. The master said, if a man be without the virtues proper to humanity, what can he do with the rights of propriety? If a man be without the virtues proper to humanity, what can he do with music? 4. Lin Feng asked what was the first thing to be attended to in ceremonies. The master said, a great question indeed. In festive ceremonies, it is better to be sparing than extravagant. In the ceremonies of mourning, it is better that there be deep sorrow than a minute attention to observances. 5. The master said, the rude tribes of the east and north have their princes and are not like the states of our great land which are without them. 6. The chief of the Zhi family was about to sacrifice to the Tai mountain. The master said to Zan Yu, can you not save him from this? He answered, I cannot. Confucius said, alas, will you say that the Tai mountain is not so discerning as Lin Feng? 7. The master said, the student of virtue has no contentions. If it be said he cannot avoid them, shall this be in archery? In this he bows compliantly to his competitors. Thus he ascends the hall, descends, and drinks together. In his contention he is ever the gentleman. 8. Zexia asked, saying, what is the meaning of the passage, the pretty dimples of her artful smile, the well-defined black and white of her eye, the plain ground for the colours? The master said, the business of laying on the colours follows the preparation of the plain ground. Are ceremonies then a subsequent thing? The master said, it is Shang who can bring out my meaning. Now I can begin to talk about the odes with him. 9. The master said, I could describe the ceremonies of the Xia dynasty, but Qi cannot sufficiently attest my words. I could describe the ceremonies of the Yin dynasty, but song cannot sufficiently attest my words. They cannot do so because of the insufficiency of their records and wise men. If those were sufficient, I could use them in support of my words. 10. The master said, "At the great sacrifice, after the pouring out of the libation, I have no wish to look on." 11. Someone asked the meaning of the great sacrifice. The master said, "I do not know. He who knew its meaning would find it as easy to govern the kingdom as to look on this," and he pointed to his palm. 12. He sacrificed to the dead as if they were present. He sacrificed to the spirits as if the spirits were present. The master said, "I consider my not being present at the sacrifice as if I did not sacrifice." 13. Wang Sun-jia asked, saying, "What is the meaning of the saying, 'It is better to pay court to the furnace than to the southwest corner'?" The master said, "The saying is wrong. He who offends against heaven has none to whom he can pray." 14. The master said, "Zhou had the advantage of viewing the two past dynasties. How complete and elegant are its regulations. I follow Zhou." 15. The master, when he entered the grand temple, asked about everything. Someone said, "Who will say that the son of the man of Zhou knows the rules of propriety? He has entered the grand temple and asked about everything." The master heard the remark and said, "This is a rule of propriety." 16. The master said, "In archery, it is not going through the leather which is the principal thing, because people's strength is not equal. This was the old way." 17. Zhe Gong wished to do away with the offering of a sheep connected with the inauguration of the first day of each month. The master said, "Zhe, you love the sheep. I love the ceremony." 18. The master said, "The full observance of the rules of propriety in serving one's prince is accounted by people to be flattery." 19. The Duke Ding asked how a prince should employ his ministers, and how ministers should serve their prince. Confucius replied, "A prince should employ his minister according to the rules of propriety. Ministers should serve their prince with faithfulness." 20. The master said, "The Guangju is expressive of enjoyment without being licentious, and of grief without being hurtfully excessive." 21. The Duke Ai asked Zai Wo about the altars of the spirits of the land. Zai Wo replied, "The Xia sovereign planted the pine tree about them, the men of the Yin planted the cypress, and the men of the Jiao planted the chestnut tree, meaning thereby to cause the people to be in awe." When the master heard it, he said, "Things that are done, it is needless to speak about. Things that have had their course, it is needless to remonstrate about. Things that are past, it is needless to blame." 22. The master said, "Small indeed was the capacity of Guangzhong." Someone said, "Was Guangzhong parsimonious then?" "Guan," was the reply, "had 3 separate establishments with, and his officers performing no more than 1 duty each. How can he be considered parsimonious?" "Then did Guangzhong know the rules of propriety?" The master said, "The princes of states have a screen intercepting the view at their gates. Guan had likewise a screen at his gate. The princes of states, on any friendly meeting between two of them, had a stand on which to place their inverted cups. Guan had also such a stand. If Guan knew the rules of propriety, who does not know them? 23. The master, instructing the grand music master of Lu, said, "How to play music may be known. At the commencement of the piece, all the parts should sound together. As it proceeds, they should be in harmony, while severally distinct and flowing without break, and thus on to the conclusion." 24. The border warden at Yi requested to be introduced to the master, saying, "When men of superior virtue have come to this, I have never been denied the privilege of seeing them." The followers of the sage introduced him, and when he came out from the interview, he said, "My friends, why are you distressed by your master's loss of office? The kingdom has long been without the principles of truth and right. Heaven is going to use your master as a bell with its wooden tongue." 25. The master said of the Shao that it was perfectly beautiful and also perfectly good. He said of the Wu that it was perfectly beautiful but not perfectly good. 26. The master said, "High station filled without indulgent generosity, ceremonies performed without reverence, mourning conducted without sorrow. Wherewith should I contemplate such ways?" Book 4. 1. The master said, "It is virtuous manners which constitute the excellence of a neighbourhood. If a man in selecting a residence does not fix on one where such prevail, how can he be wise?" 2. The master said, "Those who are without virtue cannot abide long either in a condition of poverty and hardship or in a condition of enjoyment. The virtuous rest in virtue. The wise desire virtue." 3. The master said, "It is only the truly virtuous man who can love or who can hate others." 4. The master said, "If the will be set on virtue, there will be no practice of wickedness." 5. The master said, "Riches and honours are what men desire. If it cannot be obtained in the proper way, they should not be held. Poverty and meanness are what men dislike. If it cannot be avoided in the proper way, they should not be avoided." If a superior man abandon virtue, how can he fulfill the requirements of that name? If the superior man does not, even for the space of a single meal, act contrary to virtue, in moments of haste he cleaves to it. In seasons of danger he cleaves to it. 6. The master said, "I have not seen a person who loved virtue, or one who hated what was not virtuous. He who loved virtue would esteem nothing above it. He who hated what is not virtuous would practice virtue in such a way that he would not allow anything that is not virtuous to approach his person. Is any one able for one day to apply his strength to virtue? I have not seen the case in which his strength would be insufficient. Should there possibly be any such case? I have not seen it." 7. The master said, "The faults of men are characteristic of the class to which they belong. By observing a man's faults, it may be known that he is virtuous." 8. The master said, "If a man in the morning hear the right way, he may die in the evening without regret." 9. The master said, scholar whose mind is set on truth and who is ashamed of bad clothes and bad food is not fit to be discoursed with. 10. The Master said, "The superior man in the world does not set his mind either for anything or against anything. What is right he will follow." 11. The Master said, "The superior man thinks of virtue. The small man thinks of comfort. The superior man thinks of the sanctions of law. The small man thinks of favours which he may receive." 12. The Master said, "He who acts with a constant view to his own advantage will be much murmured against." 13. The Master said, "If a prince is able to govern his kingdom with the complacence proper to the rules of propriety, what difficulty will he have? If he cannot govern it with that complacence, what is he to do with the rules of propriety?" 14. The Master said, "A man should say, 'I am not concerned that I have no place. I am concerned how I may fit myself for one. I am not concerned that I am not known. I seek to be worthy to be known." 15. The Master said, "Shan, my doctrine is that of an all-pervading unity." The disciple Tsung replied, "Yes." The Master went out, and the other disciples asked, saying, "What do his words mean?" Tsung said, "The doctrine of our Master is to be true to the principles of our nature and the benevolent exercise of them to others. This and nothing more." 16. The Master said, "The mind of the superior man is conversant with righteousness. The mind of the mean man is conversant with gain." 17. The Master said, "When we see men of worth, we should think of equaling them. When we see men of a contrary character, we should turn inwards and examine ourselves." 18. The Master said, "In serving his parents, a son may remonstrate with them, but gently. When he sees that they do not incline to follow his advice, he shows an increased degree of reverence, but does not abandon his purpose. And should they punish him, he does not allow himself to murmur." 19. The Master said, "While his parents are alive, the son may not go a long way abroad. If he does go abroad, he must have a fixed place to which he goes." 20. The Master said, "If the son for 3 years does not deviate from the way of his father, he may be called filial." 21. The Master said, "The years of parents may by no means not be kept in the memory, as an occasion at once for joy and for fear." 22. The Master said, "The reason why the ancients did not readily give utterance to their words was that they feared lest their actions should not match them." 23. The Master said, "The cautious seldom err." 24. The Master said, "The superior man wishes to be slow in his speech and earnest in his conduct." 25. The Master said, "Virtue is not left to stand alone. He who practices it will have neighbours." 26. Zi Yu said, "In serving a prince, frequent remonstrances lead to disgrace. Between friends, frequent reproofs make the friendship distant." Book 5. 1. The master said of Gong Ye Chung that he might be suitable for marriage. Although he was put in bonds, he had not been guilty of any crime. Accordingly, he gave him his own daughter as a wife. Of Nan Rong, he said that if the country were well governed, he would not be out of office, and if it were ill governed, he would escape punishment and disgrace. He gave him the daughter of his own elder brother to wife. 2. The master said of Tze Jian, "Of superior virtue indeed is such a man. If there were not virtuous men in Liu, how could this man have acquired this character?" 3. Tze Gong asked, "What do you say of me, Tze?" The master said, "You are a utensil." "What utensil?" "A gemmed, sacrificial utensil." 4. Someone said, "Yong is truly virtuous, but he is not ready with his tongue." The master said, "What is the good of being ready with the tongue? They who encounter men with smartness of speech for the most part procure themselves hatred. I know not whether he be truly virtuous, but why should he show readiness of the tongue?" 5. The master was wishing Qi Tiao Kai to enter on official employment. He replied, "I am not yet able to rest in the assurance of this." The master was pleased. 6. The master said, "My doctrines make no way. I will get upon a raft and float about on the sea. He that will accompany me will be you, I dare say." Tze Liu, hearing this, was glad, upon which the master said, "Yu is fonder of daring than I am. He does not exercise his judgment upon matters." 7. Meng Wu asked about Tze Liu, whether he was perfectly virtuous. The master said, "I do not know." He asked again, when the master replied, "In a kingdom of 1,000 chariots, you might be employed to manage the military levies, but I do not know whether he be perfectly virtuous." "And what do you say of Chu?" The master replied, "In a city of 1,000 families, or a clan of 100 chariots, Chu might be employed as governor, but I do not know whether he is perfectly virtuous." "What do you say of Chur?" The master replied, "With his sash girt and standing in a court, Chur might be employed to converse with the visitors and guests, but I do not know whether he is perfectly virtuous." 8. The master said to Tze Gong, "Which do you consider superior, yourself or Hui?" Tze Gong replied, "How dare I compare myself with Hui? Hui hears one point and knows all about a subject. I hear one point and know a second." The master said, "You are not equal to him. I grant you, you are not equal to him." 9. Tsai Yu being asleep during the daytime, the master said, "Rotten wood cannot be carved. A wall of dirty earth will not receive the trowel. This Yu, what is the use of my reproving him?" The master said, "At first my way with men was to hear their words and give them credit for their conduct. Now my way is to hear their words and look at their conduct. It is from you that I have learned to make this change." 10. The master said, "I have not seen a firm and unbending man." Someone replied, "There is Shen Cheng." "Cheng," said the master, "is under the influence of his passions. How can he be pronounced firm and unbending?" 11. Tze Gong said, "What I do not wish men to do to me, I also wish not to do to men." The master said, "Tze, you have not attained to that." 12. Zhe Gong said, "The master's personal displays of his principles and ordinary descriptions of them may be heard. His discourses about man's nature and the way of heaven cannot be heard." 13. When Zhe Lu heard anything, if he had not yet succeeded in carrying it into practice, he was only afraid lest he should hear something else. 14. Zhe Gong asked, saying, "On what ground did Gong Wan get that title of Wen?" The master said, "He was of an active nature and yet fond of learning, and he was not ashamed to ask and learn of his inferiors. On these grounds he has been styled Wen." 15. The master said of Tze Chan that he had 4 of the characteristics of a superior man. In his conduct of himself he was humble. In serving his superiors he was respectful. In nourishing the people he was kind. In ordering the people he was just. 16. The master said, "Yan Ping knew well how to maintain friendly intercourse. The acquaintance might be long, but he showed the same respect as at first." 17. The master said, "Tsang Wen kept a large tortoise in a house on the capitals of the pillars of which he had hills made, and with representations of duckweed on the small pillars above the beams supporting the rafters. Of what sort was his wisdom?" 18. Zhe Zhang asked, saying, "The minister Zhe Wen 3 times took office and manifested no joy in his countenance. 3 times he retired from office and manifested no displeasure. He made it a point to inform the new minister of the way in which he had conducted the government. What do you say of him?" The master replied, "He was loyal." "Was he perfectly virtuous?" "I do not know." "How can he be pronounced perfectly virtuous?" Zhe Zhang proceeded, "When the officer Cui killed the prince of Qi, Chen Wan, though he was the owner of 40 horses, abandoned them and left the country. Coming to another state, he said, 'They are here like our great officer Cui,' and left it. He came to a second state, and with the same observation left it also. What do you say of him?" The master replied, "He was pure." "Was he perfectly virtuous?" "I do not know. How can he be pronounced perfectly virtuous?" 19. Zhi Wen thought 3 times before acting. When the master was informed of it, he said, "Twice will do." 20. The master said, "When good order prevailed in his country, Ning Wu acted the part of a wise man. When his country was in disorder, he acted the part of a stupid man. Others may equal his wisdom, but they cannot equal his stupidity." 21. When the master was in Chan, he said, "Let me return, let me return. The little children of my school are ambitious and too hasty. They are accomplished and complete so far, but they do not know how to restrict and shape themselves." 22. The master said, "Bo Yi and Shu Qi did not keep the former wickedness of men in mind, and hence the resentments directed towards them were few." 23. The master said, "Who says of Wei Sheng Gao that he is upright? One begged some vinegar of him, and he begged it of a neighbour and gave it to the man." 24. The master said, "Fine words, an insinuating appearance, and excessive respect. Zuo Qiu Ming was ashamed of them. I also am ashamed of them. To conceal resentment against a person and appear friendly with him, Zuo Qiu Ming was ashamed of such conduct. I also am ashamed of it. 25. Yan Yuan and Zhi Lu being by his side, the master said to them, "Come, let each of you tell his wishes." Zhi Lu said, "I should like having chariots and horses and light fur dresses to share them with my friends, and though they should spoil them, I would not be displeased." Yan Yuan said, "I should like not to boast of my excellence, nor to make a display of my meritorious deeds." Zhi Lu then said, "I should like, sir, to hear your wishes." The master said, "They are, in regard to the aged, to give them rest; in regard to friends, to show them sincerity; in regard to the young, to treat them tenderly." 26. The master said, "It is all over. I have not yet seen one who could perceive his faults and inwardly accuse himself." 27. The master said, "In a hamlet of 10 families, there may be found one honourable and sincere as I am, but not so fond of learning." Book 6. 1. The master said, "There is Yong. He might occupy the place of a prince." Zhong Gong asked about Zi Sang Bo Zi. The master said, "He may pass. He does not mind small matters." Zhong Gong said, "If a man cherish in himself a reverential feeling of the necessity of attention to business, though he may be easy in small matters in his government of the people, that may be allowed. But if he cherishes in himself that easy feeling and also carries it out in his practice, is not such an easy mode of procedure excessive?" The master said, "Yong's words are right." 2. The Duke Ai asked which of the disciples loved to learn. Confucius replied to him, "There was Yan Hui. He loved to learn. He did not transfer his anger. He did not repeat a fault. Unfortunately, his appointed time was short and he died, and now there is not such another. I have not yet heard of anyone who loves to learn as he did." 3. Zhe Hua being employed on a mission to Qi, the disciple Ran requested grain for his mother. The master said, "Give her a yo." Ran requested more. "Give her a yo," said the master. Yan gave her 5 bing. The master said, "When Chi was proceeding to Qi, he had fat horses to his carriage and wore light furs. I have heard that a superior man helps the distressed, but does not add to the wealth of the rich." Yuan, sir, being made governor of his town by the master, he gave him 900 measures of grain. But Zi declined them. The master said, "Do not decline them. May you not give them away in the neighbourhoods, hamlets, towns, and villages?" 4. The master, speaking of Zhong Gong, said, "If the calf of a brindled cow be red and horned, although men may not wish to use it, would the spirits of the mountains and rivers put it aside?" 5. The master said, "Such was Hui that for 3 months there will be nothing in his mind contrary to perfect virtue. The others may attain to this on some days or in some months, but nothing more." 6. Zhi Kang asked about Zhong Yu, whether he was fit to be employed as an officer of government. The master said, "Yu is a man of decision. What difficulty would he find in being an officer of government?" Kang asked, "Is Zi fit to be employed as an officer of government?" and was answered, "Zi is a man of intelligence. What difficulty would he find in being an officer of government?" And to the same question about Qiu, the master gave the same reply, saying, "Qiu is a man of various ability." 7. The chief of the Zhi family sent to ask Min Zuqian to be governor of Bi. Min Zuqian said, "Decline the offer for me politely. If anyone comes again to me with a second invitation, I shall be obliged to go and live on the banks of the Wun." 8. Bo knew, being ill, the master went to ask for him. He took hold of his hand through the window and said, "It is killing him. It is the appointment of heaven, alas, that such a man should have such a sickness, that such a man should have such a sickness." 9. The master said, "Admirable indeed was the virtue of Hui, with a single bamboo dish of rice, a single gourd dish of drink, and living in his mean narrow lane, while others could not have endured the distress. He did not allow his joy to be affected by it. Admirable indeed was the virtue of Hui." 10. Yan Qiu said, "It is not that I do not delight in your doctrines, but my strength is insufficient." The master said, "Those whose strength is insufficient collapses in the middle of the way, but now you limit yourself beforehand." 11. The master said to Zhe Xia, "Be a gentleman after the style of the superior man, and not after that of the mean man." 12. Zhe Yu, being governor of Wuchang, the master said to him, "Have you got good men there?" He answered, "There is Tan Tai Mie Ming, who never in walking takes a shortcut and never comes to my office except on public business." 13. The master said, "Meng Zhifan does not boast of his merit. Being in the rear on an occasion of flight, when they were about to enter the gate, he whipped up his horse, saying, 'It is not that I dare to be last, my horse would not advance.'" 14. The master said, "Without the specious speech of the priest Tuo and the beauty of the prince Jiao of Song, it is difficult to escape in the present age." 15. The master said, "Who can go out but by the door? How is it that men will not walk according to these ways?" 16. The master said, "Where the solid qualities are in excess of accomplishments, we have rusticity. Where the accomplishments are in excess of the solid qualities, we have the manners of a clerk. When the accomplishments and solid qualities are equally blended, we then have the man of virtue." 17. The master said, "Man is born for uprightness. If a man lose his uprightness and yet live, his escape from death